anyone interviewing, just be yourself. Like, be the best version of yourself, but please do not misrepresent yourself. You're just making a bad situation for everybody. Like, I used to do a lot of interview coaching in past jobs. And it was like the number one thing. It's like, stop trying to be somebody else. Like, don't you want to get hired for being you? Like, at the end of the day, this is a two-way street. You're accepting a position and they're accepting somebody to fill it. So make sure you actually know who you're going to be, so they know that too, and everything's better. Welcome, affiliated listeners, to another episode of the Affiliated Podcast. I am in our special closet studio. So today we aren't going to be joined by Thomas. He got pulled into some important planning executive meetings, blah, blah, blah. He's just playing golf, guys. We just know he's got his winter golf game going on whenever it's sunny enough. But that's okay, because I'm going to be joined today by a guest that all of you need to listen to. And I'm so excited to discuss the subject. And that's one that a lot of people are facing right now as we turn the clock into a new year. We have big goals, big aspirations of what we're going to do. But oftentimes we look at ourselves and we look at our companies, our businesses, and we go, I don't have the tools to get there. And by tools, it tends to be people, whether it's you need to hire your first person, or it might be your fifth person. It might be replacing somebody that didn't allow you to hit your goals last year because they weren't the right makeup for the team. But it's just a scary thing. You probably have lots of questions. I've gotten them from entrepreneurs more times than I could count of, well, how do I hire? What's the right hire? How do I select the right person? What if I'm wrong? And then they just cry and scream in a puddle on the floor. So if you find yourself in a puddle on the floor worrying about hiring, we have an expert today that's going to give you exactly what you need to know in terms of who should I hire? Do I have the right questions? Do I have the right person? Am I training them appropriately? Everything you need to know to at least help give yourself the best chance to make a successful hire. And I could tell you, because with this individual, I have watched her hire some of my clients, people from my clients. I watched her hire just people that are clients of ClickBank, and I've never actually seen her make a bad hire. So she is fantastic. She's a secret weapon for every business she works with, and that is Michele Lambert. Michele, how are you doing today?
Wonderful. And thank you so much for that introduction. That was so sweet. And I really appreciate it. You know, I want to make sure there's quality teams being built and good people connected. You know, it's all about, doing bigger and better and growing, and going further together. So
that's awesome. And, I remember the first time we met, I don't know if you remember this, but it was at Copy Accelerator, and a mutual friend of ours, Steve Gunn, was like, holy crap, let me introduce you to the secret weapon of our business. It pretty much makes everything happen. I was like, well, that's quite a claim there, Steve. And so, who was also an episode or a guest on this podcast for those that have been listening for a long time. So, obviously you work with him, but you work with so many great companies out there. I know it's more than just hiring, but that is a big, big problem that you happen to solve very, very well. So with that, kind of walk me through, like, what do you think when you have clients come to you, what's the main kind of complaints, or I would say challenges, that you get from clients when they're coming to you saying, help me, Michele, I can't seem to hire anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I want to jump in there and say that definitely listen to that Steve Gunn episode, because he's brilliant. Like, working with him for that year, we were doing more than hiring and stuff, but like, even my mom listened to one of our calls once when I was staying with her, and she's like, man, that guy is smart. He's a smart dude, very cool, and I'm sure really great information. But yeah, to answer your question, like getting started in, like, you're ready to hire, or you just, most of the time clients or people in general, we all do it. It's like when you're starting a business, you're wearing a million hats, you're doing a million things, you're trying to do it all at once, and you're trying to do it all yourself. It works for a little bit, but it doesn't work for the long run. And as you scale, you start to need support. And a lot of times, if you're doing the hiring, or, if you haven't done it before, you're kind of like, I just need whoever. And you take the first person who comes, who sounds really great. And a lot of times, sometimes it might work out, and sometimes it just kind of blows up a little bit and becomes a little messy most of the time, because before you start hiring, you really need to get clear on the role expectations, the responsibilities, what you're really looking for. So where I like to start, even for myself, I've been doing this as I'm going through more hiring right now. I'm using all the documentation that I have all my clients go through. And it's just, you got to audit basically the tasks, audit what if you're trying to take things off your plate, you need to audit your task list, rate things on how much you enjoy doing them, about how much time you spend on it per day or per week or whatever. And that'll kind of show you what areas you can start delegating off to. And then from there, you just really need to be super clear about what responsibilities you are giving to whoever this person is going to be, and whatever role it is going to kind of evolve into. And then be
Yeah.
really clear about what your expectations are for, the long term. Like, what are their KPIs in the next 30, 60, 90 days, but also 6 months and a year. So you know what your
Gotcha.
desired outcomes are, and they are, really clear up front on where they're going.
That's awesome. Well, first I feel like we covered the whole episode right there. That you got the preview, guys, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg on some things you need to cover. That's really, really amazing. I want to just summarize, because I think one thing you said in there that I think is so telling about the mistakes that people make. Like, if you put it in one thing, like summarize, I thought that was so perfect. But it's like oftentimes they hire the easy hire, not the best hire, because it's just so hard. And we're like, wow, this seems easy. It must be serendipitous, and they must be the right fit. That is not true. And in fact, they might be the right fit, but there's a good chance if you're hiring because it's easy, you're not going to be the best employer to that person, or you won't be able to bring out the best of that employee if you don't have all these other things you just talked about. So let's kind of break that down. I want to go over kind of things mentioned, one, a clear vision on what you need or what you're replacing. I imagine that's a big one that a lot of times entrepreneurs struggle with, whether it's the mental side of like, I need to break this away, or sometimes I'm curious to hear your opinion. I think a bigger thing is lots of us don't actually audit what we do every single day. And like you said, grade, do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I want to do more of it? Do I want to do less of it? So I'd be really curious. I think that exercise, one, for every single person in this room, is probably immensely valuable, myself included, just to audit what you do, because that gives you a really clear idea of like, I would like to never do this again. So there's your first hire. Get that one done, right? If it's possible. So walk me through kind of like that process specifically. Let's do the time audit. How do you go about, like, what is the best way to do that? What are some tactics you tell your clients, or even for yourself? How are you building out those SOPs and doing that well?
Absolutely. So there's so many tools and services you can use. There's so many recommendations. I'm reading all kinds of books. Some people use the four quadrants, and kind of list all their tasks in the quadrants that are, the biggest needle movers, and what's in their kind of creative genius zone versus like what they could delegate right away, or what, requires a higher level team member, or what can kind of wait till later. There's just so many ways, you can outline it like that. But how I personally do it, and how or at least start the process, and how I've seen it work best for, the crazy busy entrepreneurs and business owners that we typically work with. They are going to sit there most of the time and work on that right away. Like, I just tell them, like, I don't care how you get it. Just write down as you're going out throughout your day, throughout your week. Just jot down, if you need to write it on a piece of paper, like, I'm doing this for this long, or if you write it on a doc. I personally give people a Google Sheet that gives them like exactly what they can do. You can set it up in a time management software. You can set it, you can use, like, if there's one that specifically, I think it's Timular. I can't remember the exact name, but it like gives you a cube, and you can turn the cube for different tasks you're doing. It'll track. So you turn the cube to, I'm working on this, and it tracks how long you're working on it. Like, there's so many ways. You can even do it in your project management software. Once you have that list of like, these are the things I work on, then put it in the project management software, put it in a time tracking software, or start jotting down on your own. Like, I started this time until this time working on that. It takes time. It takes a little, extra work to get those pieces together. But, it's a week of your time where you're spending an extra, few minutes at the end of each project. Like, this is what I'm doing, da, da, da. And I know as entrepreneurs, we're always doing a million things at once. So sometimes it's hard to remember. And that's why I say do it over a week, because, days change. It goes day by day, but there's still going to be things that happen over and over and over. And there's so many tools that you can use to figure out like how much time is spent. If you need a little bit more time to do it, that's fine. But what I find is that when people even just start writing down what they're doing, they're like, holy biscuits, like, I didn't realize, like, I was doing this and this and spending so much time here, where, my genius zone and like why my company is doing so well is I'm doing this, but I'm, spending my time on the tasks that I could hire an assistant for, or this, that, and the other. And it's not even always about the time, because it's often oh, it only takes me a couple minutes, a couple seconds, this, that, and the other. It's also about the energy and the bandwidth and the decision, mental decision making and all that kind of fatigues you mentally and takes away from that creative genius zone that you should and do want to be in. So those
Yeah.
are some tools that you can use, like super helpful. Yeah, SOPs you mentioned too. There's an app called, or a Chrome extension.
Well, actually, I'll stop you on the
Right.
SOP part because we'll go into that, I think, a little, because
Okay.
SOPs are definitely be a big piece. But I love what you said there, because I think the auditing, so much of that, which one, just do it. Find a way to do it. There's quadrants. It's just like find whatever way makes sense for you. I love that. Just find a way. But one of the things I think I've seen and heard people, and even doing this self, we don't always evaluate what we actually need very well, because that tends to be result oriented. We're going to look at results, and then we're going to try and back into what we think we need to either get that result again or improve that result. That's not a great way to hire oftentimes, because you could actually be the reason that needs to go there, and you just need to free up your time. That could really be the difference. You might be the person that makes the difference. So really the question's like, what is going to make me better first? That's really what you answer, right? How can I make myself better at doing my entrepreneur stuff first? And I think the next question is, what do I need to make the company better, right? With all these tasks the company is doing, once you get that codified down, okay, where are gaps that we could be doing more? So I think it's an exercise that's great to start with you, and then you can expand it out to more. But like I said, it's not a guess; it's proof when you actually have to step outside and be like, oh yeah, I keep doing this. This is really annoying. So no, I think that's a brilliant thing. And again, I'd encourage all of you that. What was the one with the block that you flip over? That I'm like, I want to do that. That just sounds really cool. What was that called again?
Yeah, I have to look it up. I think it's Timular, or I'll look it up, and I'll put it. I'll send it to you for after. I can't
Okay.
remember. I think
So
it's
yeah,
Timular.
look in the show notes for this really poor affiliate promotion of whatever this cube is. That sounds awesome. I love the interactive piece, but that's
Yeah.
huge. So
Well,
as we
there's
go in, so I
also
think that's one of the big things is you got to audit to know what you need more than what you want. I think that's a really, really big one. That because you could probably almost take those needs and then craft your job description right after that, which I imagine is got to be really, really powerful, right? So I guess let's actually read from that, because the SOP thing, I think we'll get to a little bit later as well, particularly when we talk about making sure your employees are prepared to do a good job. But yeah, right now, I think one of the things I want to discuss in there is, like, when it comes to job descriptions, identifying the position you actually want. So if you just do the audit, and that's great, like, what's then that process going from audit, hey, I think these are things it needs, to building a job description, actually hiring somebody, or hiring
absolutely.
like a title, I should say.
Yeah, and that's a thing that people get tripped up on a lot too. Is like, what's the title of this, that, and the other? But it's really hard to tell unless you have those tasks outlined. So whether it's for you or for your team members, I have an audit doc. I'll share with you guys too.
Yes.
That this what I usually use, and you can use it for yourself, for your team, anybody. It's super simple and easy. And you can take your responsibilities off there, and then kind of sort it out and just figure out what that position is. What department does it go with? Who are they reporting to? Like, consider what that ideal person and position is first. So we also have another document that we walk through. It's kind of like basically clarity around the role. So it's going to go over everything, your company, who you are, what you are, who you help, how you help them. But then it also dives into, these tasks that we're talking about right now, and how, after you've grouped them together and understand the different departments and different skill sets they are, you can kind of create some responsibilities out of that. And then from there, you also want to create those desired outcomes we kind of talked about. So where you want to see, like, what would be like this hire, whoever it is, what would be the ideal situation for me in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, and a year. I like to personally plan things 12 weeks at a time, but have a big 1 year picture. There's a book called the 12 week year, because we pivot
Mm-hmm.
so much in the amount of a few months. What's working best, where we're going to go. So doing a full year of detailed planning is a little bit tough sometimes, but having a direction for each quarter, and then having that kind of really clear 12 weeks at a time. So, when you're looking at your next hire for that specifically, those 12 weeks are incredibly important. So they need to better understand your company, who you are, what you're doing, but they also need to have key key performance indicators or KPIs, which these desired outcomes really are. So if you're doing them for 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months, and a year, you're all set. And then we also go through like the document we have, and I'll share this with you guys too, is we go through what your company culture is. Like, just be super, super brutally honest. It doesn't matter if, your culture is 7 days a week. I literally am hiring for something like that right now, where it's 7 days a week. Like, if the business owner texts them, they want a response, this, that, and the other. And there are people who love that and thrive on that, and they want that. So don't make it all fluff. Don't say, yeah, we're Monday through Thursday or something like that. Like, don't make it fluffy. Be honest about who you are, what your hours are, how you collaborate, how you work with people. Are you, is it more autonomous? Do you require people to be on time, on Slack or on calls or on this and that at certain times? What does that look like? And then when you're considering it for the specific role, you're going to consider this person, because a person who, like, for example, for a copywriter, is going to be a little bit different situation than a marketing manager or a, operations manager. It's a lot, they have a little bit more flexibility in when they are on and things like that, and when they're available and how quickly they need to respond. But just being like super upfront about that. So the document we have like goes through all that, goes through like your company values, make sure that you're, what your values are, and the direction, and your like mission and vision and all that good stuff, because those are required for you to find somebody who's going to fit long term. Like, you have to know what that is, and they have to also align with it and believe in it themselves. So those are just a few pieces. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, we're we're going to be breaking that down more for sure, because especially the identifying the culture and the values. I think sometimes self-awareness is hard to find. We have a lot of ideals we think our culture is, but identifying. So we'll actually go through an exercise and identify ClickBank's culture, at least the sales one. So that'll be fun. Hopefully, managers might feel different, but I think it'll be good. But actually, going back to before we move on to the culture piece, I want to talk a little bit more about the job description, because I think like even going through this, like, it makes sense to me, but also I'm like, that's a lot of stuff just for a job description. So curious, the question for me, for you would be, why is that so important? Why, from a job description, just putting the wanted ad out there, right? Why is it so important to go through that level of detail to get that job description? Couldn't I just have AI build it for me? I know you can't, but I feel like that's a question that I would ask, or an entrepreneur would, in that situation.
You absolutely can, and you should. Like, the document that we have, like, we just have people fill out the information. Most of the information is going to be stuff that's repeatable. It's only like per role that you need to go into some detail in terms of the role responsibilities and things like that. But oftentimes, like, about the company culture, your values, all of that that should always stay in alignment and be the same. And then the role responsibilities, desired outcomes, like those level of details need to happen before a hire, because you need to be super clear. So in general, there's, we have a list of questions that we have people go through, and yes, it feels a little bit more, a lot more detailed in the beginning. And if you already have maybe your values outlined or this, that, and the other, it's a lot faster and easier. But getting this done the first time around, and then putting, then you're able to reuse it for future ones. And the reason you want it to be so clear and specific is because you're trying to attract the right talent. So you're not just and repel the wrong talent. I've had people literally message me and say, oh, I read this job description, it's clearly not me, I don't want to go out and meet people and do this, that, and the other. Like, I like being behind the scenes and doing this. Like, the more clear you are in it and what you're looking for, who you are, who your company is, all that kind of stuff, it's going to attract the right people and also repel the wrong ones. So you're not going through thousands of resumes that don't make any sense and aren't necessary, because it's just very like, if you don't have this level of detail, I'll give you the level of detail and the prompt and stuff that I use, and it gives you a really nice job description. Because otherwise it's like, I've put it in there. I'm like, give me a job description for a marketing manager, and it's like so basic, and everybody, people look at it and be like, okay, but what, yeah, I'm doing that, but it's not really giving your hire clarity. So you're gonna get a whole bunch of random people. You might push away the right people. You might attract the wrong people, and it's the opposite of what you want. But then on top of that, when you go to onboard and interview and all that, they're kind of like, they have one idea and you have another idea. So when you're onboarding and keeping talent, especially, like, you have to be really, really clear on the direction that you want this role to go and what your expectations are. And so that's what the point of getting all this done up front is so that you don't have to go through this hiring process over and over and over. Like, you should only, have to do this once and be done with it, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I love that. And that's exactly what I want to hear. Because I think that's one of the things people get lost on is the job description will attract and detract the people you want it to if you do it well. If you're precise and specific, you don't have to interview as many people, and the ones that you will just be already, just by having a good job description, will be better suited to succeed. Because I imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, I almost feel like, and I've experienced this in hiring too, if you interview too many bad candidates or you see too many not great resumes, all of a sudden an average one starts to look real good. And so you almost make a bad hiring decision out of interview fatigue, not because you actually got the best candidate. You're like, I would like to not do this anymore. And especially if you're a really busy entrepreneur, 5, 6 bad interviews, you're just going to take the first good one oftentimes. And I again, people are like, oh, I'd never do that. Interview 7 bad people in a row and then see how you feel about the first average one. Like, they're going to seem like the greatest employee ever, which is concerning, right? So I just love that you brought that up. So now let's talk about one of the big ones here that we need to figure out as we're getting this information, which is the culture side of it. So you said you have very specific questions you go to help your clients kind of identify this. So we're going to do a fun little mini exercise for everybody. And I want you to pretend that I'm a client coming to you and saying, I need to hire for my sales team. And we're deciding what the ClickBank sales culture is. So if you want to ask me the questions, we'll answer it. We'll keep as much fidelity as we can so people kind of see what it looks like to start identifying and have that self-awareness around your culture.
absolutely. And Thomas isn't here to stop us, so we're going full Monty. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, pure honesty, guys. It's gonna happen. Love it. That's what you get, Thomas.
No, I'm teasing. There's so culture obviously is like like you said, is like super important to be really clear on. So the culture one is probably one of the longer ones. So I appreciate you doing this with me. I get ready. I asked for 3 key areas. I'm looking at your purpose, community, and growth. So
Okay.
under purpose is the first one. What is your company's purpose?
Our purpose is to empower entrepreneurs to live out their dreams financially, personally, wherever they live, with ease. That's pretty much what we do. We just facilitate commerce for those that want to be bold enough to try and make money online.
Love it. Love it. And making good connections for them to do that too.
Yeah.
Well,
Anything we could do to make more money. Yep, for sure.
All right. Big picture, mission, and vision you're moving toward.
Gotcha. I'd say the big vision and mission is to continue to expand the types and amounts of entrepreneurs that we support. We do a lot in a very narrow group. We'd like to expand that group to have more impact.
Absolutely. And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to align with and want to be a part of that purpose. So the next thing you want to look at for culture and being upfront about all that is community. So do you work on specific set hours or are you flexible and autonomous?
Yeah, so a little bit of both. So we actually offer both depending on what best fits for the position and for the employee. So I guess from a culture standpoint, ClickBank is very oriented around performance. And if your performance could be achieved in a non-typical structure, we're always open to that. But we do prefer having kind of your typical 9 to 5 Monday through Friday hours within office for majority of our hires.
All right. In office and everything. See, this is the kind of like radical, like upfrontness that people need to know. So what about specifically for the sales team?
Sales team still probably actually similar. Like most, I'd actually say if you're a dev, it would be much more flexible with where you're located and your hours. But in sales, because as we go to community, our sales team is a community. It's a team. And so we have regular team builders. We have, we're meeting with each other daily in huddles and stand-ups and things like that. So I think the team family atmosphere is best achieved when we get to be together regularly. So ideally, again, we lean more towards in person and being able to be a part of the team physically on the weekdays. But I think one thing that's important to know is like we are open for anybody that if they present a compelling enough case, we're always open to it if they're the right fit.
It's absolutely. And it just very dependent, like you kind of mentioned in there, is like the kind of person that's going to be attracted to a sales role versus a dev role, and how that kind of how their time and how they're spending it and the flexibility, how it matters to each of them differently, but also that community aspect of a sales team and like, rooting each other on, but also helping each other out and being in person,
Hmm.
it's a big deal. So every
Yep.
personality that's going into your business, and every role has a different personality. So part of all of this is also when you're hiring and getting ready to hire is looking at what that personality is going to match with for that role. And then like you're talking about is the community side and how they all kind of intertwine together. So for the sales team, I think you kind of already answered this, but how do you communicate and collaborate?
Yeah, so through Slack, Skype, in person, and then like so we do a lot of team builders. We have a daily stand up. I mean, we try and meet. One thing we're doing a lot more on our main sales side is doing a lot more idea sharing. So just success sharing, making sure we're improving. I'd say other things too. We definitely group trainings. We have one thing we do. It's called Barstool Wisdom every single Wednesday, where a member of the team gets to present whatever they want to the team that they could teach us. So we've had people teach us about why you should listen to jam bands, to some people talking about the vacation that they're going on this year. And other times we've had multiple art projects too. So really, really good opportunity because we care about the people along with the performance. So we really do a lot of opportunities to get you to feel connected with the team. We even do, if you are remote, we do our Christmas and Christmas party, and then also our holiday party, and then an employee picnic. We do fly out and bring those remote members still to come and interact in those big team events because it is important to us.
I love that. See, that's super important, and it's special for people to know. There's a lot of people who want that kind of connection and community. We're spending so much time of our lives spending with these people. That knowing that you care about them makes a big difference, and it shows a lot about your culture. So, I think that's awesome. And I also want to just point out, I really love those the Wednesday like teaching about anything. I've
Yeah.
heard, you get to learn so many cool things, and I've also heard clients doing that even about just teaching about different roles, like whatever your role is, you stand up and teach about that for a little bit. It's just interesting because I think it brings a lot of more collaboration and community, like you guys have clearly found. So that's super cool.
Agreed. Agreed.
Um,
Especially in remote environments, it can be tough. So you really got to do some extra stuff sometimes to create that community when you don't get to physically just be right next to them.
exactly, exactly. Bringing it together is super special, and you guys do a good job at that. Um, You already answered this one. Do you host regular meetings daily, weekly, and every other week? And then the communication channels that you use. So all that you guys put into community and explaining those details and that level of detail, as well as like the tools you use and how often they can expect you. All of that matters for the right candidate and for the right people. It's going to attract the right ones. So the last one, only two more questions, is the growth area. So do you offer training and sponsorships?
We do sponsorships. Not quite sure what that would be, but yeah, training for sure. In fact, I think we have a we have a great culture of facilitating those that want to learn. So this is actually something that I think we don't do a good job communicating in culture, and we should do better. But this job gives you access for the independent learner and the hungry person to learn so much about so many things. It's insane. Like whether it's direct response marketing, or it's the amazing information that all of our clients seem to teach people. You have access to plethoras of education, and you could grow in ways that are tremendous if you let yourself. And we've actually had many, many employees on our sales team and other divisions. They learn so much, and we encourage them so much. They've gone off and been very successful in this industry, and whether it's their own offers, their own businesses, or even things outside of it, because there's just so much opportunity to learn a lot of great things here. So yes, I would say we need more people that are so hungry for just learning. And if you have that hunger, we are the buffet of education that you're looking for at ClickBank for sure.
Yep. That's amazing. That's amazing. See, that's exactly what a lot of people are looking for, and that's what you want to find in the kind of candidate that you're wanting to attract, because you want somebody who's always growing and improving and getting better and being better. But also for them to realize the opportunity for them is beyond a paycheck, and it's beyond, it's the community, it's what they're going to learn, it's the access to knowledge and experience that they get by being a part of this company. So by sponsorships, I meant like masterminds and stuff like that. But I know you guys are involved in so many
Makes
of
sense.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are involved
Yes.
in loads of those. So yeah.
Oh yeah. On the sales team, you're going to be able to go to a lot of top masterminds and learn things that people are spending a lot more money than you are to learn that information. So it's pretty awesome. So it's how Michelle and I met. Look, you get to meet amazingly smarter people than you just by being in this job. It's great. That's so cool. Well, awesome. That was actually really fun. So that was the last one, right? Or was there one more?
I do ask about what sort of growth initiatives or performance planning you have in place. So what are the long-term growth initiatives that you'd like for that role? And then what kind of is the performance planning for them to reach that? So those are all things that you really just need to be considering prior to that hire. And it's going to help with the compensation setup and everything else too.
That's amazing. I just want to repeat this because I think it's the thing that I have gotten the most excited about this. And I think it kind of transitions this idea, this question of, okay, like, great, we've built a great job description. We're going out and we're getting people, and we'll get into kind of the interviewing thing. But I think one thing just in terms of what we'll get at the end of how to make sure they succeed, that 30-day, 60-day, and like 90-day, those barometers, getting those checkpoints, I think that's one of the smartest things I've heard in hiring, to actually think, hey, I want to be at the right spot here. And we know that they're going to be winning because we're checking in. Because I know one of the big things we always hear is you want to fire fast and hire slow. Be really patient on the front end, as we've talked about. We've only talked about a job description, right? We've spent 30 minutes talking about job description. And obviously there's a lot more that goes into it. We talked about a lot more, but like so much in that. And I love that. I just want to put that having those benchmarks, guys, gives you a really clear chance to know if you made a good or bad decision. And I think we're going to go on to like the interviewing process, but I think one thing that's important for everyone to know, do the work to get the best hire you can, but don't be discouraged by making the wrong hire. We all do it. It'll always happen. They might just be a great interview and just trick you because they have a skill at getting hired and doing no work afterwards. That happens, right? So I just want to put that out there, that what a great way to fire fast, which is a huge asset in your business, to have that opportunity where it's an easy decision to make because it's objective. And then, just remember, fire fast, hire slow. So with that being said, we've gotten the candidates. We have a great job listing. We've identified our culture. We're patting ourselves on the chest because we're like, yes. And we put it out there. And now, horrifyingly, people have applied and I have to interview and select the right candidate. This feels, we could barely select leaders. How are we going to select employees? So walk me through kind of some of the things, whether it's the questions during the interview process, or maybe some of the tactics when it comes to that selecting the right person. What are some of the things that you tell your clients or even do yourself?
Yeah. So for myself, when I'm doing it for clients, like I have, first I send out, cause it is a tedious process. It can take a long time, but like you said, having all this prepared in advance makes it a lot faster to go through the hundreds of applicants, and also to just make sure you're getting the right fit, cause you're clear on who this person and role is. So, with that, I usually send to anybody who I think is like, I'm like, yeah, this could definitely be it. I send them a second round of questions, usually about 5 questions, just kind of really specific to the industry, the niche, something really specific about that job. Because we work in direct response, I'm most often asking about their video sales letter experience, their ads experience for the marketing teams, and different things like that. But also, leadership, just key pieces that you're looking for. If they then pass those pieces, I send them through a video ask interview. And the reason that I do that, and this is something actually I got from a client, one of your clients as well. And it's helped tremendously, because the video ask interview is a little bit longer, and it's something where I get a chance to explain details about the role and the position while asking them a question. They record their video response. It's usually about anywhere from 5 to 10 questions. Sometimes we do a little bit more if it's a more in-depth role, but they're getting to understand the company better. We're getting to ask the, questions and qualifiers. And then we also are able to share that with the client. So the client's able to review. So even, I make sure that anybody who gets that interview, that video interview, is someone who's definitely going to be most likely qualified. But then we get that video interview specifically because we want the client to be able to review it too, or say they want to have other team members review it. They get off the call and they're so excited, like, oh, this was so great. But then it's like, oh, wait, but like, this person, like, maybe I'm just, like you said, like, I've had decision fatigue, or I'm tired of going through bad interviews, and this interview was so great, I'm just going to hire this one. Have other team members take a look at it, make sure it makes sense. Also, you're not asking the same questions over and over and over. So the other part of that is you do a first, or somebody does a first initial interview, ideally around culture fit. After that, and then have different team members meet with them and make sure that they think that they're a fit. So it's not only the person who's directly overseeing them, because often that person's gonna will get a little clouded, or fall in love with someone because they have this personality they like and they really get along well and this and that, but maybe they don't have the qualities that are going to match. So have another leader on your team, interview them, make sure that they're a fit. So, and then in the interview itself, I use something called the STAR method, as well as the lab profile, which I learned from Dale John in a mastermind I was in previously. It's basically, the STAR method is a lot about really just like putting a situation together and finding out the actions they took to resolve it and what the results were. So it's very situational focused. You get to understand, you get to hear their thought process and understand, based on this situation, how they would resolve it and what they've done in the past in their results. And then the other one is Lab Profile by Dale John. And that one kind of gives you a little bit better idea of their key motivators. And it's something that kind of shows you, are they moving towards something, or are they moving away? Are they like motivated by moving away from something? Are they more interested in, just different kinds of ways?
Now, is this a personality profile that they fill out, or is this something you're asking and based on their questions, it tells you the answer to that?
Yes,
That's super
you're
cool if it's
asking
the
them
latter.
questions, and based on their responses, it's telling you how that is. So I can't share too
That's
much of
cool.
that, but it's a really good one. So it was in Nothing Held Back that he did that like a couple years ago.
Gotcha.
So it was a really interesting. So you just the questions you ask them, it takes about 15 minutes in total to perform an entire lab interview or lab profile interview, and just based on how they respond, you're able to tell what motivates them and if they're going to be a fit for that position based on like how their wording and their language and how they respond.
That is awesome. I like that because that's one of those things that you're gonna, through that stuff, you often get to the pure intent a lot easier, since people are trying so hard to be an ideal candidate in an interview process, not necessarily just be themselves. Which I will tell you, this is actually no, anyone interviewing, just be yourself. Like, be the best version of yourself, but please do not misrepresent yourself. You're just making a bad situation for everybody. Like, I used to do a lot of interview coaching in past jobs. And it was like the number one thing. It's like, stop trying to be somebody else. Like, don't you want to get hired for being you? Like, at the end of the day, this is a two-way street. You're accepting a position and they're accepting somebody to fill it. So make sure you actually know who you're going to be, so they know that too, and everything's better. Anyway, so just a quick plug for all those people interviewing out there. Stop lying. That's not a good idea.
Well, you want to align with the role just as much as the
Yeah.
role, the company aligns with you and everything. Like, it matters. You're
Yeah.
going to be spending your time there. Don't just jump in for a few months and become all frazzled and, not able to continue performing and just fail. So it's better for everyone.
So I want to break down a couple of things you said. That I actually think this process, particularly the ask call or ask video, that's super smart. Love that. So just so I'm kind of breaking down, I'm going to break down my understanding of it, and please fill in if you're like, that's totally it. And you're like, no way, let's recorrect it. So you start off first, obviously you're going through, you're making sure they fit with culture. And the first thing is questions to just further clarify, I would say, skill set, right? So you're getting general baseline, and it's like, now I want to really prove that they're not just lying on the resume. So these are going to be specific questions that anybody that's filling this role should be able to easily answer. Might not be the technically correct way, but you're like, they should have a general idea. If not, I don't want to train that on anybody. Perfect. You move to that stage. And so on this video ask, the questions that you're asking, so you kind of mentioned, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because I find this idea just really, really cool, because you also get a really good idea of what they think when they're sending a video back, not just with the words, but how they hold the camera, what background they chose. Did they dress up? Did they just read and react and not think about anything? Which I'm like, shit, I think I've had this happen before many, many years ago. I'm pretty sure I did the latter, and I was like, I'll just talk. So,
Oh no,
which
I've
is who
had
I
people
am.
show up
But
shirtless before, and
yeah,
I'm like, because it was a fitness one. I'm like, shirtless is not going to help you. Like, please put your clothes on. Like, I'm not sending this.
Michelle is
But
just being themselves. They're like, I never wear shirts, so I want to be representative of who I am.
I think they should probably start their own line, and you can probably help them with help them with
Yeah.
some of that. Like, maybe go somewhere else. You don't know that you.
Yeah, you might need your own company at that point. We don't wear shirts
Yeah.
here. But yeah, it's like Skims, but just skins. That's what we call it. Anyway, sorry. But so when you're so you're going for on the video ask, like, again, brilliant, but like the questions you mentioned, you're going to do a little bit of a culture or description and then ask a question. So when you're coming up with those questions, because in a way this is like a pseudo interview, right? It's the
Mhm.
base intro interview, so it's kind of those base intro questions that you don't normally really ask follow-up on, because you can't really do a follow-up in this format. So it's like, hey, let me give some base level questions. And do you find that 5 is the magic number, or have you experimented with more or less?
Okay, so I maybe explained it a little wrong. I'm very excited about all of this right now. So
Okay, gotcha. I'm glad I clarified then. I'm glad I
yes,
clarified.
I'm glad you did. So in the application itself, I have standard questions, then I have a few questions, like usually about 3 to 5, that are very specific to this position, and they are either going to be a make or break. If they pass that part and they, everything looks good so far, I want a little bit more detail on what on ensuring that they're the right fit. And specifically, the reason I started this, and this is where I asked the 5 written questions, usually just an email response. The reason I started doing this is because our industry specifically, with the direct response industry specifically, a VSL or a video sales letter here is a completely different idea from what the majority of other people in marketing think. So, you'll have somebody say, yeah, I have a lot of VSL experience, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll go in and they'll review something of yours and they'll say, okay, you should shorten this to 1 to 2 minutes. And we're looking for long form VSL. So I want to make sure that they understand that. Or like, ad spend budget, that's very important to, how you're running, because a lot of clients in the direct response specifically, high ad spend to long form VSL. So those are 2 questions that I have specific questions that I'm clear about in there if we're hiring for a marketing team. There's also, different questions if it's operational, what kind of team leadership experience they have, how many team members, just a few like kind of a little bit details, nothing that's going to take them more than 5 minutes to respond to. So those are my 5.
You can't send them like, here's your dissertation response. It needs to be kind of quick checks. Okay.
I want to respect, that's the other thing, is you have to respect both the candidate's time as much as the client's time. So you also, like, for being, good to the people and to collect or to bring in the right people, A players, you got to respect their time just as much.
Yeah.
So
I love that. It's great advice. Do not give somebody a job to interview for a job. That's not the best.
yeah. Yeah, and it just doesn't feel good. And that's why we started inserting these 5 like really simple written questions. Maybe it takes them
I
5
like
to
that.
10 minutes, but I prefer, something ideally around 5 minutes or less. And
I
then
like that.
if they go through that, then we send them through this video ask interview. And it's basically, I think it's the same platform as Typeform, and you can respond to them in video. Like, they can respond, they can answer this video ask at any point, any time that's convenient for them. You can watch it when it's convenient for you. You can contact back and forth through it. I've done that before with several people, but for the most part, what I do when I'm doing the video ask is it's about 10 questions. It's a little bit longer and more time consuming. So that's why I make sure that these are only going out to the very top 1%, maybe 1
And
to
do you
3%.
let them know this is almost like, hey, this is basically like a pseudo first interview. We're going to do it in a different format, but kind of treat it as such, kind of a thing. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the first interview. It's their first interview. It's instead of the actual interview. And I do it so that I can deliver it to the client and so that the client's team can look at it. So they're not having to repeat their questions and responses over and over. Like, they've got it. They've done, so.
That is so smart. I'd like, literally, if anyone just wants to take one hiring idea, and I've done a lot of hiring over my years, and that is so smart. Like, that is the smartest thing I've heard in a long time, because it's so easy to do exactly what we talk about. I know everyone gets to see the first interview, Holy cow. Because I could tell you, like one of you said, like sometimes you get kind of caught up, or maybe they like the same food that you do, so you think they're a great hire. And I've gotten
Mhm.
those interviews, then I get the culture fit, and I'm like, what did they like cast a spell on you? What makes you think this was a good candidate, right? Like, so I just being able to see that right from the get-go, it would just be
Yeah.
so powerful, not only from time, but just I think keeping people aligned with candidates. That is just awesome. I really, really love that. So okay, so it's through Typeform, and it is just basically that first interview. That's so cool. And then from there, it is then cascading that video. If say you said yes, we think this is a good fit for the hiring manager or for you and the team, then it goes around so everyone could see that multiple culture fits, and then you're doing 2 culture interviews, right? One from the hiring manager or the reporting person, and then other kind of more. Do you want specifically other leaders, or is it just like anybody that you kind of, we could call them culture leaders, whoever your culture leaders are in the company? You just have that as like a secondary interview, because it sounds like to that point you should be pretty convinced they're a skill fit through everything else, the initial interview, the application, all that stuff. So the rest is just, are they a culture fit after that? Is that about right?
For the most part, yeah. So like the video ad stuff, honestly, like I've been using it for a little over a year now, I think. A little over that. Actually, I got it from Jason Capital, another of your clients. Amazing. It helps so much. And there's actually several clients who will not even consider somebody unless they do that video ask interview. If you're really nervous about being on camera, you can do written, but some of them won't even, consider unless they are seeing you face to face, because what they're looking for in the video is they're also looking for, like, if they're looking at an operations person who's detail oriented, they want to know that that operations person has written out ideas and examples, and they want to see that they're reading off of them. So we give them the questions in advance so that they can prepare whatever they want to, however they want to. If they want to prepare
Yeah.
screenshots of performance, in marketing and stuff like that. So just prefacing that, like, there's things that you're looking for in that video ask, and then you're sharing it. So that gets shared with whoever is on the hiring team. So typically after that, I send it to the client, and they'll either have, it's either the client directly, like the business owner who's reviewing them, and I only send them usually about the top 3 to 6 candidates, because it's a lot for them to review, and we want to
Yeah.
eliminate decision fatigue. So it's either they're reviewing it directly, or they have a hiring HR team, and they first have somebody. The first interview after that is a 15-minute culture fit. Some people do longer, depends on who it is, but it's usually just a quick culture fit. Make sure that they're the right. That they match with the company. And then after that, they would go into a final interview, usually with the owner and or another leader, just to ensure that that person is exactly what you're looking for, get all your questions answered. And then after that, I know it seems like a long thing, but some of these roles, like when you're trying to get, the higher level roles, you have to be really, it's a longer process. Then after that, second leadership interview, you would go, and most of my clients do kind of a test project or a test assessment of some sort, whether it's paid or, if it's unpaid, make sure to keep it under 10 to 15 minutes, I suggest. But if it's or you could also do a paid project, so that you're making sure that you can see how they work. And so a lot of times for something like that, like I'll have, if it's like, say, like a performance marketing or a conversion rate optimization, I'll have them review a VSL or a sales page and say, like, what would you do differently here? And so that should take them, no longer than 10 minutes on Loom. I want to hear ideally 5 to 10 minutes max. And that would be kind of like the initial test project. Anything beyond that would be paid. Operations people, stuff like that, a lot, or marketing managers, depending on what it is, you can ask for, what they think they would tackle first in those first 30, 60, 90 days and things like that. And that also kind of helps direct some of your plan moving forward. But as long as you have you've already set those intentions of what you want, they should be able to kind of fill in the gaps of how you're getting there. So those are just some of the pieces along with it. So.
Well, that is amazing. No, I love that. I love too that, hey, if it's going to be more than 10, 15 minutes, pay them for it. Because I think a lot of people lose sight of that sometimes. Like you said, you want to be respectful. And honestly, I do not want an employee that's willing to work for free for an interview, like do actual work for, it's like they don't value what they do enough at that point. So that should actually be a signal to you that that's not even an ideal employee at that point, at least in Kyle's made up company. So anyway, so we've gone, we're running a
Oh,
little bit
sorry.
long because I've just enjoyed this so much. So I want to circle back because we've talked about this many times. So just the last thing I want us to cover is great. We've gotten the person, they've gotten the assessment, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit. How do you make sure that if you get the right person, they actually succeed? Because this is one area where I think a lot of people blame a lot of hires. They think that hiring's all wrong, blah, blah, blah. And the problem is they need to stop doing this and start doing this, because there are definitely some things you need to do to ensure your client or your new employees are actually going to be successful. So we covered a couple of them, and like we talked about SOPs and things like that. But why don't you give them, for time's sake, I know there's probably more, but give me the top. We'll do the top 3 things that you need to make sure you have before you even make that hire to make sure that they're going to be as successful as possible. If we haven't covered them, if we have covered them, you could still mention them. We'll just go over it faster.
I mean, yeah, it's probably the same thing, and honestly, it's same for your existing team too. You need to have key performance indicators or KPIs. They need to know what they're trying to achieve and when, and your expectations. You need to have clear onboarding, so any kind of documentation you have around the company. If you have, details on if it's for marketing, you have details on the marketing audience and products and funnels and all that kind of stuff. And then just being really being available to check in and ask and answer the questions. So nobody's going to jump in and immediately be able to pick anything up, even if you have the KPIs and stuff. And the SOPs, which SOPs are incredibly important. You can use the script. I think it's Scribe. It's a Google add-on that you can use, and it creates SOPs for you, just records what you're doing. It's super simple. But yeah, you should always have the SOPs for your company. If somebody gets sick or for onboarding or for any purpose, somebody else needs to pick up real quick and make something happen for the team. So yeah.
I would encourage actually small teams. I'm going to go give you an audit technique that actually should be really good, especially for small, flexible teams. You should rotate responsibilities every now and again. Just have all your team do somebody else's job for a week. And that it'll stress test your SOPs. It'll also help you reveal if anyone's doing something really shisty. It normally helps that get discovered, because someone's gonna be like, why are you doing this way? Wait, this makes no sense. So rotations are really good for small teams. Big companies do them at any critical position. It should always be in there. So anybody controlling money, finances, any of that stuff, rotate the roles. It's going to make sure they have good SOPs in place. It's going to help prevent bad behavior, and it'll make all your team a lot better, because they're just going to understand each role better. So I think that's always a really good thing to throw in there. But no, that was brilliant. I love that. SOPs, can't tell you enough. Like I've been in a position with no SOPs. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. You have no idea what you're doing, and you just come over something like, this sucks. I hate this job. It's not fun. Don't do that to your employees unless you're hiring them to build SOPs so they know they're coming into a cluster of a holy biscuit situation, which you said earlier, which I loved. So yeah, make sure that the SOPs are huge. Good onboarding. And the last thing to say, and I see this missed all the time, and I'm going to add to too, is the KPIs, but KPIs that actually tie to the success of the role. I've seen a lot of people put KPIs and they get really frustrated because, like, well, they're hitting their KPIs, but they're not doing their job. I'm like, that's your fault. Like, why would you make KPIs that if they hit them, they can't be successful at their job? Like, or they could still not be successful at their job while hitting KPIs. Like, you've made a very bad KPI. And I know that's always hard, but just remember to really, it sounds stupid, but I see all the time. I'm sure you do too. You got to make sure the KPIs actually track to the behavior you want. So really build those out appropriately. And that those employees could actually know that they control that KPI. That's the other thing. They should feel they have control over the KPI for those things to be effective. Anyway, this is amazing, Michelle. This is super huge, really great. I feel like we still only scratched the surface here. So one of the amazing things that you were going to do for us that I still am just so grateful for, and for all your listeners out there, this is a huge asset. If you're not ready to hire right now, it doesn't matter. Take this episode, save it, take the resources Michelle's going to give you. She already mentioned them out there. They're going to be in the show notes. Use them when you're ready to hire. Even before that, get the prep done now. It'll just make you better at your job. It'll make you better to be an entrepreneur. Really key stuff. So you're going to have all that. That being said, a lot of people are probably listening saying, can I just work with her? And I will tell you, you should, because she has helped some of my best clients hire some of now their best employees, which have transformed their businesses. It's not without, like, this is not made up. It's real. So for those that want to work with Michele, they want to work with you. What's the best way to going about doing that? Whether it's maybe I want you to help me get hired somewhere, or I need to help find employees, or the other side is this is a small portion you do. Really, you could just help the operations of an entire business be so much better. So just kind of talk through how they could work with you and really the whole of what you could do to help these business owners.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and just want to reiterate what something you said is like getting clear on all this beforehand makes those KPIs easier because they're super important. But
Yeah.
for anybody at anything, so any role. For working with me, like I do, I primarily just work with people in the hiring place. Now, my background is in operations and marketing leadership positions, so I do have a lot of experience with like setting up SOPs, systems, processes, all that. But my favorite lately has been really just making sure that people are in alignment and have what they need to better understand the team building side and to be ready and build that team. So I have some options in the operation stuff for certain position or certain opportunities, but for the most part, really just will help you build. We can have one-on-one white glove service helping you from A to B or A to Z with the recruiting and team growth and setting up job descriptions and all the promotions, and we do outbound lead searches and all that good stuff. But we also just have like resources for you to use. We have a Rolodex of some incredible talent in the industry. We're always looking to add more amazing talent. So if you're looking for positions, feel free to join that. We have a job board community as well, and all kinds of other good stuff. So we have a few ways of working with us for hiring. But yeah, we do all the goods. We're here to help you grow your team. And thank you for
We'll make sure those are in. We'll make sure those are in the show notes. And I just want to do a shout out again, guys. Like working with Michele, like it's. I've never heard anyone say a bad thing, and I've seen nothing but great results. The other thing too, job board and the Rolodex, strongly recommend. If you are in a position where maybe you're an entrepreneur, but you'd like to work for a bigger company to learn more, great. That's a great place to see what skills and where that entry point is into this industry specifically. Whether you're a freelancer, deciding not to be a freelancer, it's always really good. I know I follow the job board specifically because in my network, if I know somebody would be a good fit for a company, I always want to see what's available out there. So even if it's just because you want to be a good friend to the people you know, it's a really, really great place to be. So again, Michele, this is fantastic. It was great having you on. I enjoyed so much of it. Obviously, we went, I think we'll be close to an hour by the time this thing's done. And I don't say that as a way of like, I'm like, oh man, this is great. It could have been longer. It was so good. So for the listeners out there, please reach out to Michele, join the job board, work with her if you need her, which pretty much all of you should need her. So really, really appreciate her time. And with Thomas not being here, first, rate, review, subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss another episode and you're automatically reminded as soon as one drops, so you're never left out without the knowledge. And as Thomas would tell the people, happy scaling. I'll do my Thomas impression, happy scaling. And Michele, for you, be safe, be great. Thanks so much. Everyone out there, have a good one.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. I appreciate you having me.